Want to say a good thank you to Mr. Big Voice on this Friday morning. And of course, it's the final top story of this week, end of February of 2015. Not that anybody out there is celebrating or even in mourning about that, but I thought I'd pass it along. It's also payday at News Radio 1310 KLIX, and nobody here has a whole lot of complaints today. A lot of folks are coming in and out of our studio this morning. I should point that out right off the top. We're going to have someone from the College of Southern Idaho shortly, followed by someone from an event called the Fur Ball, which really deals with people who are looking to assist with animal rescue in the area, well, in southern Idaho. So that's coming up as well. And in the latter part of the program, we'll be spending a few minutes with a comedian. He's making an appearance locally tonight. So what we'll do is we'll have an opportunity to speak with him for a few minutes, and you may have an opportunity to pick up a couple of tickets while he's here to actually see his show tonight. A lot going on all over the region and really all over the country and all over the world. I had a couple of notes that I jotted down here. Oil, the price of oil has dropped again by a bunch as of yesterday. So you may be seeing that, may be seeing that in a few days at the gas pumps. Also, our guest coming by talking about the fur ball, which if you've ever had a cat, and you've had a really big cat, like one I have, that has really long hair, that brings up some connotations that aren't really all that nice. You know, having moved into a new house a couple of years ago, and some of the house had linoleum, and some of the house had carpets, there was simply no way to train the cat to go over to the linoleum when he had an issue. And in fact, he pretty much does whatever he feels like. He seems to believe that we are the tenants and he owns the house, albeit he's never made one mortgage payment. But we have some more serious things to talk about today. I did a search on the computer a few minutes before airtime today, and I wanted to do this because after I got home yesterday, I got an email, and it was from WorldNet Daily. I get some of these automatic emails, and I looked through it, and it was about the woman that they say in media is this is a media term, the front runner Hillary Clinton for the 2016 Democrat Party nomination for president. Hillary Clinton, of course, was First Lady, lived in the White House for 8 years. While she was away, all sorts of interesting things happened. Then she was a member of the U.S. Senate for one term from New York. She ran for president, lost in the primaries to Barack Obama in 2008. Then she became Secretary of State just long enough to mess up Libya and Syria and just about everywhere else around the world. And then she departed, and the media never gave her any grief for it. It was assumed, well, it's somebody else's fault. George Bush's, I guess, even though he's been gone for a very, very long time. But you do remember, it was, 2 years ago last year. It was 2 years ago, last September 11th. There was a major conflagration at not our embassy, but we had not only an embassy, but we had lots of offices around Libya. And Hillary Clinton engineered that war that deposed the president of Libya at the time. He was president for life, of course, and a lot of people would say Muammar Gaddafi was not a very nice man. On the other hand, he decided in 2003 that he was going to throw in his lot with the USA, and he became a very good ally in the fight on the war on terror. And he liked to tell the American government, look, you may not like me, but I'm keeping a lid on a lot of really bad things over here, and that's what I've really always done. But somebody in the Obama White House, and likely Mrs. Clinton, was cheerleading for this, decided he had to go. And then Benghazi, where we had an office, and some of our diplomats were working there, was attacked. 4 Americans died, horribly, we should point out, horribly, in this terrorist attack. You may also remember in the days that followed, the White House blamed it on some terrible, terrible movie that was floating around on YouTube that some disgruntled Muslim had made, attacking the Prophet Muhammad and the like, and Hillary Clinton and her office immediately used that as a cover story. And then because of that film, there were riots all over the world and hundreds of people died. But hey, it saved the president's bacon in the upcoming 2012 election, didn't it? So it was irrelevant that they lose a few hundred people in Pakistan and in North Africa and elsewhere around the world. As long as you get reelected, that's the important thing. If you have to do it over the bloody bodies of 4 Americans and hundreds of bloody bodies of Christians and Muslims elsewhere around the world, then so be it. That's the ends justify the means when you're a liberal or a Marxist-Leninist. And I think they're pretty much the same. We could put them on a continuum, but I think that most of us have a gut feeling after watching what liberals have done when they got unleashed in 2009. We know exactly what they're really all about. James R. Corsi, who has written some great books, very big investigative reporter, who is ignored by the mainstream media, of course, had this piece at WorldNet Daily, Emails Prove Hillary Terror Lie in Benghazi. State Department emails released through a lawsuit by Judicial Watch show then Secretary of State Hillary Clinton knew, while the September 11, 2012 attack on the U.S. compound at Benghazi was underway, that it was being carried out by terrorists. Clinton blamed the attack on, quote, rage and violence over an awful internet video, unquote, when she spoke at a ceremony at Andrews Air Force Base on September 14, 2014, as the remains of the 4 Americans, including Ambassador Christopher Stevens, were returned to the United States. The emails were made public Thursday by the Washington, D.C. legal watchdog group. So I thought, wow, I saw this yesterday afternoon. I said, this is going to be a big, big story. The woman who could be the president of the United States in just a couple of years told a whopper again. And it was essentially done to ensure that her boss got reelected. And so they could shy away from the wars they started in that part of the world that have gone oh so wrong. And when you hear people complain about George W. Bush and his wars in Afghanistan and Iraq, think about the wars started by Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama in places like Libya, Syria, and Yemen. And then you can stand back and you can see the damage that these amateurs have wrought. So this morning I thought, well, I'm going to be going on the air in a couple of hours. So I did a Google search. Not that I would recommend anybody use Google. Start Page is the safest place to go, especially now that the internet will be trolled by the Obama White House following yesterday's FCC vote. But I went to Google because I know it is a repository, and from my work desk, I really don't care if the government's looking at what I'm doing. And I typed in Benghazi, and then I hit news. And I could not find any stories on Clinton's lie sourced from the Washington Post or the New York Times or CBS or NBC or ABC or the CNN or MSDNC. I found a lot of alternative media reporting the story. But if all you do is go home at night, sit down in front, if you're one of those folks who still doesn't use the internet a lot for news, and we still have millions of Americans who are watching the old alphabet networks, if you tuned into them last night, you wouldn't know about this story. And if you read a big-time newspaper, you wouldn't. Even a small-time newspaper like the Times News, you're not likely going to see anything in the pages. If it was, it'll be buried on page A17 in a tiny little corner at the bottom of the page, and that's all you're going to see. In fact, they'll tell you there's nothing to see here. Move along. And yet they're going to hammer Scott Walker, who's the son of a Baptist minister, on whether or not he believes in evolution. My own personal thought is we don't know how long God's days were when he was creating the universe, and we certainly don't know how evolution got started. I wasn't there at the time, but indeed, if it did happen, everything I've seen with the double helix and the DNA tells me that there was intelligent design there. Question is answered on that, right? And then they have to ask Walker all of these other questions. Do you believe President Obama is a Christian? 4 Americans died in Libya horribly, and this White House, and the woman who may occupy it for the next 4 to 8 years, she was involved. And they're asking these ridiculous questions of the opposition? Shouldn't they be embarrassed by such blatant? Well, I don't know how you could put it any other way. Again, they are giving the Democrats a collective Lewinsky, day in and day out. Is there no shame among the folks in mainstream media when they do these things? It is just abhorrent. It is treasonous. It is traitorous. They're making a mockery of the First Amendment freedoms that they have. They have the 5 liberties guaranteed in the First Amendment, and they have to turn around and they have to go out and play for the other team. They cannot go down the middle of the field and try to be as unbiased as it just doesn't work any longer. They screamed for years that Republicans in Congress were obstructionists, even when Democrats held both houses of Congress. And then when that collapsed after 2010 and then after the last election, now Mr. Obama is threatening to veto everything they send over to the White House. But no one in media will call him an obstructionist. Why is that? Maybe the next time you see even one of your local newspaper editors on the street, they'll be out there denouncing gun ownership somewhere on a corner. Next time you see them, ask them about that. Ask them why they think that their mindset, that their worldview needs to be shared by everyone else, and ask them when it was that journalists in this country stopped reporting the facts and became cheerleaders for the Marxist-Leninist program that is coming out of the Democrat Party. Oh, they'll say, oh, I know where you're coming from, and they'll make all sorts of excuses, these pompous people who think that they're, because they interviewed a brain surgeon one time, that they're brain surgeons too. They don't cure cancer. They don't launch rockets into space. They just report the news, and they report it badly. It's 8:17. Bill Colley with you on Top Story this morning on this beautiful Friday. The weather forecast, and I don't want to gross up the weatherman. When I was reading the weather forecast earlier this morning, it said cloudy today, and it just showed that little icon with just nothing but clouds, no sun peeking out. So at sunrise today, I looked outside, and there was beautiful sunshine. But we are expecting a lot of clouds over the next few days, and perhaps even tomorrow morning, a few snow showers and a couple of rain showers as well. But that's really it. Otherwise, we're just in the doldrums when it comes to our weather pattern. I've got time before our next break for a very short telephone call. 34 at our studios at 8:18, and you're on the air on News Radio 1310 KLIX.
Yes, Bill, you've got two kinds of useful idiots, the uninformed useful idiots and then the compliant useful idiots. You know, these people that literally pave the path for these people to get away with this stuff. Literally, you say to yourself, well, do they not have family? Do they not have friends and relatives that live elsewhere in this country that this could eventually affect them? You say, how in the hell can you be so damn blinded with your ideology that you would be willing to do that? But you see, there's no explanation anymore. It just seems like the world has gone crazy.
When Rush Limbaugh says state-controlled media, he's not far off the mark. Thanks for the call. And it's not just the Hillary Clinton story. I happen to see the Lois Lerner story. She's the woman from the IRS, of course, who was trying to squash the Tea Party by using the IRS as a secret police. And now a congressional panel spoke with someone who succeeded her yesterday. His name is Camus. Spoke to him yesterday, and he said that there are emails they've collected, about 30,000 of them, but he won't provide them to Congress. Congress said, why not? He said, well, there's a criminal investigation going on. Oh, really? And today, again, I couldn't find anything in establishment media about that as well. Hello? Am I missing something here? This isn't news? Oh, and another hearing yesterday on Capitol Hill. It was determined that the government has spent millions and millions of dollars in payouts to insurance companies, but doesn't know where all the money went and can't track it down and still doesn't want to give Congress an answer. And the FCC won't come in and speak to Congress. More and more, you hear these things and you look around and you realize we are dealing with a criminal syndicate that is in control at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. And the minions they've appointed throughout the bureaucracy, these are the most dangerous people to the American Republic. We have a guest joining us in the studio, and she's a frequent guest with us on Fridays, Ella Donahue with the College of Southern Idaho. Ella, I think your microphone might be working.
Hello. Yes,
oh, there you go. See, it's taken me only 2 months, and I figured out Kelly's system in here. Well, you know, those engineers, they do things elaborately, but it's sort of they go through a lot of steps that the rest of us don't think about. Mm-hmm. But that's because they have such technical minds. They're challenging themselves. Mm-hmm. And then there might be they might have some enjoyment out of it after they leave, and the rest of us have to figure it out. But
yeah.
Just quickly, I've got to mention as well, Ella mentioned a couple of weeks ago that she's actually thinking about going out and perhaps becoming a school bus driver. Western States Bus Services hiring part-time bus drivers right now, split shifts 5 days per week, summers off, and scheduled no school days. Pay is $10.75 per hour. Apply today by contacting 733-8003. Western States Bus Services, an equal opportunity employer. In fact, you folks had a course in this not long ago at CSI. Mm-hmm. And you've got a lot of other things going on. Big concert coming up.
Yes, we have the Magic Valley Symphony's next performance is tonight at 7:30. The featured artist for tonight's performance is CSI's own music professor, Scott Farkas. Scott oversees a unique performing group, the CSI Percussion Ensemble. And tonight he gets to show off his own percussion skills tonight. So tickets are going to be $10 for adult, $8 for seniors, and $6 for students. So don't miss out.
This where the symphony hall is, I take it it's acoustically just perfect, right?
Oh yes, we have a very, very awesome campus. So everything is pretty good.
Yeah, it's a lot different than I went to a community college in another century. And I can remember we were in an old building that had housed a state police traffic center. And then I see the College of Southern Idaho, and I think, how come I couldn't? Some of us are always on the losing end. But for those of you who are actually attending CSI, you should be proud of that. It's a beautiful, as she points out, campus. You have a couple of other things going on, too. This one caught my attention. Physics for Rock Stars.
Yes, Christine McKinley is going to be coming to CSI next Wednesday night, the 4th of March. She is a best-selling author of Physics for Rock Stars. And what makes her unique is not only is she a mechanical engineer, she is also a rock musician and has a very entertaining speaking show. And she uses her show to help students for all ages start thinking differently about math and science. Physics for Rock Stars is hosted by the CSI Honors Program, so it is free and open to everyone. And it's at 7 p.m. next Wednesday night at the Fine Arts Auditorium.
And I was going to say, the Fine Arts Auditorium, everything is easy to find when you get on that campus. Because
and
it's
usually
like a big
they have
circle.
someone that's like, okay, is this where you're here for? Okay, well, this is over here, and this is what we got going over here. It's very, very helpful, very easy to navigate.
Someone gave me directions on campus last week for the when we were doing the home and garden show, and the directions were great because I didn't think to look for another entrance off of the main road. Being the new guy, I was driving circles around this beautiful campus and thinking, I don't see it yet. So somebody was coming out of a building, likely, professor or staff, and I stopped and asked questions, got great directions, and 5 minutes later, I was in the building for the Harm Show. The Home and Garden Show. It's 8:27. Ella Donahue was in the studio with us from the College of Southern Idaho on Top Story this morning on News Radio 1310 KLIX with Bill Colley, 34 at our studios. And a couple of other things you have listed too as well. A veterinary technology club with a workshop.
Yes, they're doing, if you love horses, the CSI Veterinary Technology Club has a full-day workshop for this next Saturday, March 7th, from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m., and you'll learn all the basics of horse care from feeding and grooming to first aid and bandaging. The cost is only $25, and it includes lunch. To sign up and get more information, please call Dawn in the CSI Ag office at 732-6401.
I imagine out on the ranch when you were growing up, you had a few horses around.
Oh, I still do.
Okay. I'd like a couple of big Clydesdales.
I have a half draft. She's beautiful. She's got big feet and really, really fluffy mane. I love her.
Almost like a Percheron then, too, right? They're big horses as well. Yeah, to me, I don't have any use for the smaller horses.
Except they can clean your yard. They can be your little lawnmower. You'll never have to mow the lawn again.
And they fertilize it too. Yeah. You got to watch where you step. And then lastly, Harrod Center's annual science camp-in.
Okay, so what this is it's for your 3rd through 5th graders, and they're going to come in and they get to take parts in hands-on science projects in the evening of Friday, March 13th, do some stargazing in the observatory, which is fantastic, and it'll be a lot of fun for them, and they get to see a cool show in the planetarium. Then they sleep over in the Harriet Galleries, and parents pick them up the next morning, Saturday the 14th. Spaces go quickly, so get more information now by calling the Harriet Center at 732-6655.
Horses may be calmer than. Have you seen that video yet? I think it was in California, no, Arizona, where I think it was llamas escaped and were running down the freeway.
I didn't see that, but it sounds really funny.
It was strange to try to watch these people trying to corral the llamas because the llamas obviously didn't have any interest in going back.
Probably not.
We had some horses when I was a teenager, and they'd occasionally get out, but they weren't as bad as the pigs. The pigs would get out, and you'd come home from school, and you wouldn't have to worry about mowing the lawn because they'd take their noses and snouts, and they just
dig up everything.
Yes, and they were pretty good at that too. So when they ended up in the freezer, I really didn't complain.
No, and plus it's really, really tasty.
Yes, bacon for the entire winter. It was great.
Oh, yeah.
Well, again, we'll see you next week about the same time.
Yes.
Ella Donahue joining us from the College of Southern Idaho. It is 34 at 8:30. We have more coming up. Going to be talking, in fact, about something called the fur ball and how you can help out with some animals who may need new homes. They're in shelters, and if you're an animal lover, you don't want to miss this. That's on the way on News Radio 1310 KLIX. I have another guest joining us in studio, and a few minutes ago we were talking with Ella Donahue from CSI about horses, which are big furry creatures. But most of us, if we have, since we don't have always pasture land available, our animals around the house are often just dogs and cats. I realize there are people out there who sometimes go for more exotic animals, but still, in this country, dogs and cats, I still think are going to rule the roost for a long, long time. We're joined by Debbie Blackwood in the studio. First of all, I'd like to say welcome.
Thank you very much.
We have 20 or 35 at our studios, in fact, at the moment. Actually, that's outside. It's a little warmer inside. 8:34. Bill Colley with you on News Radio 1310 KLIX. And newsradio1310.com means you can listen to us anywhere around the world on the web. Janice, who told me about this event, happens to be involved with rescue throughout the area. I have done some work with them in past places that I've lived. And yet, of course, it's one of those missions that is not going to ever really seem to go away.
That's correct. It's a ever demanding, a person to maintain your longevity has to, just sometimes probably say no, because it will burn you out because it's so, emotional and stuff to help animals get relocated to areas from where they're not wanted to areas where they are wanted. And it's awesome to participate. But I know Janice has been doing a lot of work in that capacity, and I think it's wonderful.
Now, the fur ball is designed, that's coming up in a couple of weeks, or
Yes.
a week from tomorrow, I guess.
That's correct. That's March 7th. It's our 7th annual fur ball. And the fur ball is an event to celebrate helping this areas, the Twin Falls Animal Shelter and People for Pets, our homeless animals and their medical needs. So these animals come to us and they're adoptable, but they have an inner eyelid that needs repaired or an ear infection or porcupine quills. And that's hard to come up with that additional money, but they need that care. And so we put on this fundraiser to raise money for the medical needs we see nearly 4,000 animals a year at the Twin Falls Animal Shelter that People for Pets takes care of.
For people who'd like to come to the fur ball, what do they need to do? Is there a website or a place they should drop by to get tickets?
Yes, you should come to the Twin Falls Animal Shelter at 420 Victory Avenue to pick up your ticket. The seating is reserved, and it's $50 a ticket. And again, the money goes to help the animals seek medical attention and get up for adoption. It's going to be held from 7 to 11 at the Turf Club in Twin Falls on Saturday the 7th. And so come to the animal shelter. You could call over if you want to at 736-2299 and tell us you're coming in, and we'll hold some tickets for you for a short amount of time just so we don't. But we really want people to participate. I think my biggest anxiety right now is selling out those tickets because it's just a full house is always so fun and obviously more profitable. So come out. It's a wonderful party, excellent band, kind of cross-generational band. So it's not hard rock, it's not one dimension. It helps. It's fun to dance to. It's fun to listen to. And there's a lot of chatter, a lot of raffle prizes. Yummy hors d'oeuvres. We get the top of the line hors d'oeuvre kind of thing going on. I think it serves as a supper for most, and it's just a fun event. It's surprising how many raffles you might, if you buy a raffle ticket, you might win. I mean, there's sometimes some tables take 6 and 7 baskets home and stuff, and we have some big ticket items as well. So it's a really fun party. I think one person described it or characterized it as the funnest get together in Twin. It's just a bunch of nice people who all love pets.
I was going to say, again, you've referenced, we got about a minute and a half to go. You referenced the cost of medical bills because so many animals don't get veterinary care, especially if they've been living out in a feral condition. Even if they weren't feral to start with, they don't have that treatment. The lifespan of a cat that's outside, like in that situation, is 3 years, where versus a house cat might be in the teens. So you're dealing with some sometimes very steep bills when it comes to veterinary medicine.
We are. I mean, we always have to, we look at this thing as, is the prognosis good? And it's hard to turn away taking care of an animal. I mean, we take them in, we shelter them, food, and we keep them safe and we give them tender, loving care. But sometimes just the facts are they need the medical attention, a professional to attend to their needs. We had an old boy there now who was dumped in the way outskirts, and he was kind of so frightened. we couldn't catch him, so they set a humane trap and brought him in, and he's sweet as pie, but he's super starved down. We have another yellow lab, for some reason, finds herself at the shelter. She has a benign tumor, but it's getting in the way of her ambulatory capacities, and that needed removed. So it's just on and on and on. So it's, but it feels so good to be able to help them, and people can help us help them by just coming and having a grand old time at the fur ball.
I want to thank you for coming by today. If you see it when you're outside, you may notice that we have several furry creatures that like to just hang out by our building.
Awesome.
And one of them looks like a miniature panther.
Awesome.
Cat, but as friendly as a puppy.
Awesome.
But that's some of Janice's work there too as well. Thank you again, and good luck.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
We have a couple of fine sponsors that are going to be talking with you in just a moment. On the other side of that, we have a lot going on. I have a comedian coming up in the next hour as well, and he's going to be spending some time with us talking about a show he has coming up tonight. You might even be able to win some tickets. I have a quick mention here too as well, talking about these people earlier, and if you're looking to pick up a little extra income around the house, or perhaps you retired and then you got bored, and you're bored and you want a little extra income, and you also like doing something that serves the public and working with young people, Western States Bus Services is hiring part-time bus drivers right now. Split shifts, 5 days per week, summers off, and scheduled no school days. Pay is $10.75 per hour. Apply today by contacting, and here's a telephone number you can reach, 733-8003. That is 733-8003. Western States Bus Service, an equal opportunity employer. So much to talk about today, and we're really, on most Fridays, we are just jumping around, and I admit that, going from story to story that we happen to encounter. And here's something that I wanted to shoehorn in the next couple of minutes as well. I mentioned that we're seeing perhaps another dive in gasoline prices, although you may not see it today. You might see it by next Tuesday. It seems that the oil pricing the gasoline pricing at the retail level always follows on a Tuesday. This is a story out of the Daily Caller. Majority of oil sands passing through Keystone Pipeline is for domestic consumption. Now, the president has vetoed this Keystone Pipeline, despite the fact that a great many people say it would provide thousands of jobs, if not 10,000 of jobs, 10,000 or more jobs during construction, plus all of the other what they call ancillary jobs that would be created, would spring up, and people would be taking around that. At least 70%, the writer says, of oil sand imports passing through the pipeline would be used for domestic consumption. That means right here in the good old USA. Now, what does that mean? Well, a little bit more on this. This is due to the fact that the U.S. Gulf Coast boasts the largest concentration of refineries specializing in heavy crude from oil sands, mainly coming from Canada and Venezuela. And since the latter has switched its exports to China as a result of a set of Chinese government loans that carry a long commitment of oil supply, the pipeline would simply replace these lost imports. So we're not getting that Venezuelan oil anymore. So the Canadian oil would have to be coming this way. The impact on greenhouse gases would therefore, the writer says, be negligible, contrary to what the Environmental Protection Agency is telling the press. And they're saying it would be very bad to have these oil sands coming down through here in a pipeline, and we can't have that. No, we're going to have to say no, because we'll all just be fine with our giant pinwheels and our solar panels and the flatulence coming out of Washington. Yeah, that'll keep us going for a very, very long time. If we could only harness that, tie a bag around the backside of a John Boehner, and you never know. Not that we're blaming Republicans on an equal basis with Democrats here. I understand that, but sometimes with Mr. Boehner, it's difficult to tell where he belongs. I bring all of this up because we had this accident the other day in this country, and a couple of years ago there was a horrific accident in Canada because oil tankers, which are heading down railroad tracks, sometimes derail. And the explosions and the resulting deaths, it's not a very pretty picture. But if you were pumping more oil through this pipeline, you wouldn't have to be taking the oil around the country in trains. Therefore, you would have fewer opportunities for those trains to go off the tracks, explode, and kill neighbors. Makes sense to me. Why can't we go ahead and do it? Well, because the environmentalists who campaigned against this whole idea of the Keystone XL pipeline, they funded, people like George Soros, they funded the White House campaigns in 2008, 2012, and they also funded a great many Democrats in campaigns for the Senate and House. Now, even though they lost, which shows you where the great American public stands, the majority of Americans want this thing constructed, they went around Washington and they greased the palms of a lot of Democrats, including Mr. Obama, and come hell or high water, he's not going to approve this thing, simply because he can't bite the hand that has been feeding him. Oil's big swings are the new normal. This comes from the Wall Street Journal. The Wall Street Journal says crude prices are tumbling to their lowest level in nearly a month after data released Wednesday showed inventories continuing to swell. We kept hearing that with the low prices that we were going to see the folks up in the Bakken Shale in the Dakotas put out of business. Didn't happen. They keep pumping oil. And all over the world, people keep pumping oil. Demand is there, and we're actually pumping more right now than the demand actually calls for. But that's why we're seeing lower prices. Imagine if you had this Keystone pipeline thrown into this mix. When we saw in January, figures came out earlier this week. Don't know if you heard this or not. We get a monthly report on inflation in the United States. We actually had deflation. Not that you want a lot of that. That usually is a sign of a depression or something bad. But we shaved 1/10 of a percentage point off the cost of living last month. Gasoline prices. Americans also have more money in their pockets to do other things with, save if they choose, buy if they choose. And yet we keep being told we're going to have to put away all of these so-called fossil fuels, which actually aren't from fossils, we should point out. We're going to have to put those away, and somehow we are all going to survive on the giant pinwheels. The writer at Wall Street Journal says it is a sharp turnaround for a market that was relatively dull until a year ago. But there is no expectation that the oil market is going to stabilize soon because they have gotten so good at pulling oil out of tough spots that this is going to go on at least for a century, maybe a couple more centuries. And there is also a word, you may have heard this before, called abiotic. And we have heard terms used like that when it comes to oil, abiotic oil, which means that oil is not a finite resource, that it's going to continue to be produced. And what happens beneath the crust of the planet creates more oil. So we're going to find new fields all the time. And when you rush off to take on a new field, perhaps an old field will replenish. This is God's gift to us, if you will, if you look at it that way. The writer at the Wall Street Journal says oil prices have closed higher or lower by more than 2% for 24 out of the 37 trading days this year. Compared to last year, that only happened twice. So that gives you an impression that things, at least at the moment, are going to continue in this vein. Maybe the only thing that would stop it would be Iran dropping a nuclear bomb on Tel Aviv. And then that whole part of the world would be inflamed. And you've got some people over there who are trying to do something along those lines anyway. And if they cut off some of the shipping supplies by doing that. Did you see this video the other day? Somebody sent this to me, and I watched it. I don't think that the Iranians are making anyone quake in their shoes. They took a ship that looked like an American aircraft carrier. They probably built it in some, they probably dragooned somebody working in a theater department somewhere in Tehran. I don't know what kind of theater they can get away with in Islamic Republic. They probably said, build a great big ship for us, put something together with paper mache and make sure it floats. So put a little tar on the bottom or whatever. And then the Iranians attacked it to sink it. But you see this big model of a U.S. aircraft carrier sitting out on the water, and then you see the Iranian boats, not ships, the Iranian boats coming out to attack it. And they're all, they look, I grew up on a small lake. In my hometown, we had a lake, the circumference of it was 7 miles. There were about 300 houses around it, and just about everybody had a boat, usually an old inboard or an IO. And, these things may have had 4 seats. And you would get out on a summer day, and the entire lake would be filled with these boats bouncing around. So you had all of these Iranians in these little puddle jumper boats racing off towards this model of this giant U.S. ship, and then they started firing on it in an attempt to sink it. Now, of course, since it was a model and it was probably made from balsa wood and paper mache, it wouldn't take long to sink. And they released this video as a way to show how tough they are and strong they are in their effort to negotiate with us. I'm sorry. I looked at it and I thought this was some sort of comedy sketch coming out of an old Monty Python routine with these tiny little boats racing up and the little white puffs of smoke that were going on all around the bigger ship. The Iranians this week also decided to hang in effigy Barack Obama and then burned him. Now, I don't know about you, but that would make the Iranians racist if they are simulating a lynching. And he still negotiates with them. If you're a good American who has a job, a store on Main Street, a job building something, or you're working out on the farm and you have some Tea Party sympathies, his spies are looking at you, his IRS, his Department of Homeland Security, and any other department he can throw at you. National intelligence is being just directed unbearably in your direction anymore. They're investigating you because they claim you could be a domestic terrorist. And yet the people he's negotiating with halfway around the world, who have sworn often that their goal is to eliminate Israel and then likely us, they're burning models of him in public while he's hanging from a rope. Is there not something wrong with this man's mind? Did at some point in his life, maybe as his mother was dragging him around the world from third world country to third world country, did he get hit on the head and maybe a couple of screws came loose? Because, frankly, he's not the sharpest tool in the shed if this is what he's doing. The elevator isn't going to the top floor. He's 2 beers short of a 6-pack. It's 8:54. Bill Colley with you this morning on News Radio 1310 KLIX and newsradio1310.com. And you can reach our program by calling us. You can call us at 736-0300. That telephone number again, 736-0300, 35 at our studios. You can also email me at bill.colley@townsquaremedia.com. That is bill.colley@townsquaremedia.com. The last name is spelled Colley. I have an email here from the office of Brigitte Gabriel. Brigitte, I guess, is how she pronounces it. And I've asked her to join us on the program in a couple of weeks. Speaking of someone who's dealing with that part of the world, if you've ever seen any of her presentations, some of the videos online are just, they're gut-wrenching. When she tells the story of the Muslims driving her family out of Beirut, Lebanon, and people living in the basements among the rubble and trying to protect themselves from these, let's face it, savages that were coming after them. She is going to be doing a presentation. I got notification of that yesterday, a presentation here in Idaho next month. And I dropped an email to her office to see if she would be available to spend some time with us on air. And here you go. Hey, Bill, sure. What date and time? So it looks like we're all set in that sense. You do not want to miss what this woman has to say. She won't be able to tell us a whole heck of a lot on radio other than the particulars of the event that she's going to be involved with. If you don't mind driving to the Boise area, you're going to have your ears pinned back when she tells you exactly what people can expect if we allow this cancer to continue to grow. And she doesn't mince any words in that situation. Mainstream media doesn't like the woman. Yet she witnessed it. They did not. She was there. Unlike Brian Williams, she was actually in the middle of all of these wars. And she saw the viciousness, and she understands what's at stake. And so many people in media are trying to discredit people like her because of their political, well, it's not just political correctness. We can excuse it that way, but that just would imply that they just, well, again, elevator doesn't go to the top floor, but there's something much more sinister at work going on here. In a few minutes, we'll have Fox News with an update at 9 o'clock. Coming up at 9:30 this morning, just after the 9:30 break in our program, I'm going to be joined by a comedian, and he's going to lighten things up around here a little bit today. He's doing a show at the Canyon Club tonight. He'll be talking with us about that. He'll spend about 5 minutes with us in studio, but that's just to wet your whistle if you have an interest in getting out tonight and maybe having a few laughs. His show is at 8:30 tonight at the Canyon Club. And as I say, he's going to be joining us in 35 minutes or so. His name is James Scott. He's about 6.5 feet tall, mountain of a man, but people say that he's got just a raucous sense of humor. 8:57 now. Bill Colley with you on News Radio 1310 KLIX and newsradio1310.com. And I don't have enough time to do this. Maybe I'll squeeze it in the next hour if I find a couple of minutes. I've been sitting on this most of the week. It's a clipping from a talk show host named Fingers Malloy, and he had this published the other day at the Washington Times. Joe Biden, the crazy uncle we never wanted. If we have some time later in the program, there's a quiz attached to this. And what he does is he gives you a statement, And then he asks you if the vice president made it, or if Homer Simpson said it, or if Peter Griffin from Family Guy said it. And it's hilarious because you go through this quiz and you have to try to figure out which dingaling would have said something like this. All the more reason, I guess, we have to support the President of the United States whether we want to or not for the next couple of years, because if he suddenly went away, decided that he had to resign in disgrace because of his dealings with Iran, or the Benghazi mess, or the IRS mess, oh, you pick your scandal, we'd be stuck with number 2. And America's number 2? Danger, danger, danger. 36 now at our studios. As I said, Fox News, straight ahead, right here on News Radio 1310 KLIX. Remember that story earlier this week about the fellow at college up in northern Idaho? He's now known as the former financial aid director at Northern Idaho College. He was going to Craigslist. He'd been doing this apparently for several years. He would post an ad there saying that he could provide people with scholarship money in exchange for favors. That's a euphemism, you know. I hope I don't have to go beyond that. So he would post these ads, and he would offer himself to having an engagement with either a young woman, a young man, or a mix, multiple. And so he did this for a long time until somebody decided to send an undercover in, and he was arrested after providing the check and all to the young undercover. Now, he says that he can no longer afford his defense. And I'll get to this in a minute. This is from the AP story. The Spokesman Review reports in a story on Thursday that 36-year-old Joseph M. Beckin is also asking for a public defender. Beckin says he's in a rough financial situation because his wife is unwilling to provide any financial support. Gee, you think so? You got 3 kids and a wife at home, and you're out trolling the internet looking for sex with students, and you're also using your job to use money likely from either donors or taxpayers in exchange for that sex, and you think your wife might be just a little upset with you. So the guy made his own bed, well, so to speak, and now he's got this issue, and he wants somebody else to provide him with a public defender. I think that this is the height of audacity when you happen to see something like that. And then I came across this today, too. We've been hearing different discussions going on in Idaho about how we're going to repair roads in the area. And there's a lot of discussion about removing taxes now from the actual equipment and the supplies that road builders buy. In other words, eliminating sales tax so it would make it cheaper for them to actually go out and do the road construction. The state, though, would still lose all of that revenue and sales tax. Meanwhile, neighboring Utah, senators have voted to move forward on a proposal that would increase Utah's gas tax by 10 cents per gallon. A lot of people who live near the state line are going to be buying their gas in another state. I've seen this happen before with outrageous taxes, whether it be on alcohol or whether it be... State of Maryland, if you've ever looked at a map, you look at the state of Maryland, it's an oddly shaped place. In some parts of Maryland, I don't think it's more than a few miles wide. You start getting out into the western part of it, and then there's a very little narrow strip, and then it connects to a slightly wider strip in the far west again. But if you live there, in most places, in a matter of minutes, you can be in another state, Pennsylvania, West Virginia, Virginia, Delaware, and you can go to those places, and they don't have taxes on gasoline and alcohol that are quite as high. And you'll literally see this. You'll pass the state line, and you'll see all of these liquor stores that have been established in the neighboring state because people go there now to buy and save money. If you live nearby, why not cross the state line? And if you drive down, there was a road called Route 113 when I lived in Delaware, and I was taking Suzanne's parents once for a trip down into Maryland, and we were passing all of these shopping plazas and liquor stores along the main Route 113, and then we crossed the Maryland state line, and all you saw were pine trees. Does it not impact your state in the long run? You raise these taxes, but don't you lose the revenue because you lose the business? And can't legislators see how this happens? because if they raise the gasoline tax by that much, then you're going to see a lot of people who do live, and a great many people in Utah do live very close to a state line somewhere, and they may have a better opportunity to do their business elsewhere. So that's an argument going on right now in Salt Lake City that could end up perhaps even benefiting folks in Idaho before it's all over. And then one other thing I wanted to mention in this segment of the program, 9/11, 35 at our studios. Bill Colley with you on Top Story on News Radio 1310 KLIX. Media Research Center. Lead story there. They have 7 stories today they're reporting on. Media Research Center is a media watchdog. Dan Gaynor, the vice president, Dan and I once did a symposium together, and we humiliated some newspaper reporters. Not that it was very hard, but we had them sitting there just staring glumly at the floor before it was finished. In other words, it's not our fault. You're telling people about all of our mistakes. That's not fair. Well, we were telling people about their bias, but that's another story. This is the lead story today at Media Research Center. We talked in the last hour about this report on Hillary Clinton and Benghazi, where it appears she lied through her teeth, knowing immediately it was a terrorist attack, but in denial, and still in denial. I guess the line, what was the line? What difference does it make? Was that the line? Someone can help me out if I'm paraphrasing and not necessarily giving the full quote. Here's the headline. She has other issues. She's been taking money for her foundation from evil people around the world, the Chinese communists, various Islamic republics, and they will all expect favors if she's elected president. That's how that works. They're not giving her the money because they think she's pretty and they like her. They're not like that guy at that college who's trying to get a little on the side. That's not what's going on here. Now, her husband might be trying to do that, but she's not. Networks spend nearly 6 minutes on runaway llamas, but nothing on Clinton ethics story. After ABC and NBC failed to cover a front-page story in the Washington Post on Thursday morning about ethics questions surrounding the Clinton Foundation, their evening news counterparts continued the blackout by showing no interest in this story, yet allocated nearly 6 minutes to efforts to catch 2 runaway llamas in Arizona. The video is funny. I mean, if the llamas had been splattered, you wouldn't be laughing. It is funny video. But what's the mission of the old alphabet networks other than to get people like Clinton and Obama reelected? It's to show you videos of llamas running down the street. That 6 minutes. 6 minutes. It's like these networks that break away and they have the car chases. I can remember one time I had to turn the TV monitors off in a newsroom where I worked. We had a bank of them, about a dozen of them on the wall, because the staff was watching a large truck that was carrying metal on a trailer. It had been stolen, and it was leading police on a high-speed chase on the freeways around Los Angeles, with metal flying all over the place as it broke away from the trailer on the truck. And the staff was so transfixed by it, I had to turn the monitors off to get them back to work. So they're playing to the least common denominator here as well. And they're ignoring some really big stories that will in the long run be important to Americans. But the Romans had a slogan, bread and circuses. That's exactly what we're giving people now. And if people want to watch llamas, instead of hearing about how their pockets are being picked or how they're being sent to the cleaners or the country is being sold out from under them, then I guess it's partly your own fault as well. Coming up on 9:15, you can reach the program a couple of different ways. First of all, you can send me an email at bill.colley@townsquaremedia.com. That is bill.colley, Colley, at townsquaremedia.com. Or you can give me a shout by telephone, 736-0300. That is 736-0300. And in a few minutes, we have a guest coming up. He's going to be making an appearance tonight. He's actually considered to be one of the premier comedians working this part of the country. And I hope you can stick around for that. He's going to be joining us just after the break at 9:20 when we hear from some of our fine sponsors in a few minutes, James Scott. And he's going to be appearing at Canyon Crest tonight. That show starts at 8:30. I can't be there tonight because I've been up since about 2:30 this morning doing some other duties here at the office along with Top Story. But he's going to be talking with us, and I'll be able to give you an opportunity perhaps to actually go and see the show tonight if you have an interest. In other words, we could have a couple of tickets set aside at the box office, the will call window. When you get there, just go to the will call window and you could pick them up. So we'll talk about that in a few minutes. I also wanted to mention as well in this segment of the program our friends at Western States Bus Services, where they're hiring part-time bus drivers right now, split shifts 5 days per week, summers off, and scheduled no school days. The pay is $10.75 per hour. That's well above the minimum in case you're counting. Apply today by contacting, here's the telephone number, 733-8003. That is 733-8003. Western States Bus Services is an equal opportunity employer. 9:16 now on News Radio 1310 KLIX and newsradio1310.com. Bill Colley with you until 10 o'clock this morning. Rush Limbaugh, of course, as usual, on Fridays, and he does the open line Fridays. He will. Some people get that confused and think we're all doing it, and I think we disabused somebody of that last week. But if you've got a really juicy one, I might be willing to listen. But otherwise, my name isn't Rush. He does that. He's up between 10 o'clock and 1 o'clock today. Sean Hannity will follow him following Fox News at 1 o'clock this afternoon. And I mentioned a couple of other things, too, earlier. If we can get to them before we wrap up the program today, I don't want to launch into it when I've just got a short window. But no, I shouldn't say that. It's a dangerous thought. Vice President Joe Biden is a man who has been known for gaffes, and if he happened to be a Republican, they would be hounding him out of office right now, also because he tends to fondle women at various events that he happens to attend. But we have a list that a talk show host in another part of the country compiled, and the host name is Fingers Malloy. I thought that was an interesting name when you're talking about Biden fondling women. But he compiled a list of various quotes, and there's a quiz involved with it. You have to hear the quote, and then the quiz asks you if that was said by the vice president, or if that was said by Homer Simpson, or by Peter Griffin. Peter Griffin is the cartoon character who's the father on the TV show Family Guy. So we'll get to that, I hope. If not today, I'll have to do that on beginning of next week. I've been sitting here with this quiz for about 3 or 4 days thinking we'd get an opportunity to actually play it on air. Still haven't had an opportunity yet, which tells you that there's been a lot going on throughout and across the region. But a couple of other things I'd like to talk about, too, if we have some time. It's going to get a little dicey, though, near the end of the program. There is an effort by the food police to better control what you're eating. And if I get a chance, I'd like to share with you what they're talking about doing. And when you go buy potato chips, a warning bell may now go off. They'll probably be pointing at you in the store saying, this guy's a pig or whatever else it is when you're buying food they don't want you to buy. And number two, a lot of people believe all of these recent reports about potential terrorist attacks, whether it be a thermite bomb on an airplane or whether it happens to be a report of mall attacks, that this is actually just what we call a false flag. That is, that there are people at the Department of Homeland Security who are trying to force Republicans to fund their office and fund amnesty for illegal immigrants. So what they're doing is they're going around saying, we have all of these terrorist reports, these potential terrorist attacks that could happen. In other words, that will frighten people into pressuring members of the House and Senate into caving in and giving them what they want over at Department of Homeland Security. But if we're talking about dangers at malls, there is another writer, speaking of lists, this writer has compiled a list of all of the attacks that have taken place by gangs, and these would be non-Muslim gangs in most cases, at various malls around the country. And this fellow says, we have to be more worried about that than we ever do somebody screaming Allah Akbar running up and down through the mall swinging a sword. Details, if possible, on all of these coming up before the end of the program. It's 20 after 9. 37 at our studios. Bill Colley with you on News Radio 1310 KLIX. And you can hear us anywhere around the world online at newsradio1310.com. We have a guest joining us in studio. We were just commenting about the music that was playing because, well, it was a comedy program, and that's his business, too, as well. James Scott joining us in studio on News Radio 1310 KLIX and newsradio1310.com. Right now, 36, and coming up on 9:24. First of all, you're doing a program tonight on the local level. You're up really early, though, when you consider your schedule for performances.
Oh yeah, I mean, like it's fun though. I just did a whole bunch of interviews and it's great. Well, hello Twin Falls. This is James Bigfoot Scott coming at you live. Come on down to the Canyon Crest and come see some good comedy.
I remember years ago we had to do a string of interviews at some other radio stations I worked at with Bob Goldthwait. But Bob, it was back in his hometown, so Bob had been out late with some of his old friends, and Bob was not happy about having to get up at 5 o'clock in the morning and come in and do the round of radio.
Oh, he wasn't. Yeah, well, I'm kind of early bird myself because in college, I played college basketball, and so it was different times we got up. We practice 3 a.m. in the morning, 12 in the afternoon. So my body is used to it. No matter what, I can, use my body, wake me up like 7 in the morning. I can go to bed at 5 in the morning, wake up at 7. So,
how do you go from college basketball to stage comedy?
Well, actually, when I was coming up, I had a friend of mine who was my teammate in college, and he thought I was funny. He said, promise me when you graduate out of college that you would try stand-up. And I said, oh, get out of here, man. He said, promise me. He said, you're funny. I said, okay, I'll give it a shot. 2 weeks later, he was murdered in New Orleans.
Ooh.
2 weeks before graduation, and he was there for me when my mom passed away. And so it's him. He's the reason why I'm doing stand-up comedy for over 15 years now, because of him. So that's how I got into comedy.
How does it compare to like doing other work? Because I've done things other than radio. And even though people say, why would you want to do radio? I love doing it. And I would assume that you have some comparisons too like that.
Yeah. With me, I'm fortunate because, not too many people can do this and survive. I survived, September 11th. I didn't know if I was going to go back into law enforcement. I'm a former police officer. Go back into law enforcement because of how the roads were going to be. Stand up is going to be back again. And I survived a lot of things where I'm on a radio station talking to you, getting interviews and doing shows. You just have something. You got to have something in your heart to do this because not too many people can do this. There's a lot of comedians been doing it for over 20 years, and you never seen them on TV. I mean, like 15 years ago, people was coming up with me. They thought they were going to be on Jay Leno in 2 weeks. It's like you're not going to be on Jay Leno in 2 weeks. There's comedians been around that have been on Jay Leno. So you have to really work it. I mean, I've been doing comedy since I was 26, 27 years old, and now I'm 46. And now now I can pick and choose because I'm a headliner now. And I've been doing commercials. I'm slowly getting, my name is slowly getting out there. And I just have to hang in there and I have beautiful support from family, friends that say, hey, keep doing it, keep doing it. So that's where I'm coming from.
Big difference from people like me who are on a microphone where we don't see anyone we're talking with, though. And you're dealing with people who are looking back at you. And to me, that would be intimidating.
Oh, you mean when I'm on stage?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, because it's just you. I can't depend upon a friend of mine say, hey, what was that joke I said last week? You remember? Come on up here and explain it. That doesn't work out. It's all me. It's just like if you get into a fight, it's up to you. It's like wrestling. It's 101. I can't depend on anybody but me. And then you got to make sure you have like a good crowd. But most of the time you may have a dead crowd. And imagine doing the dead crowd for an hour.
Where did you end up playing college basketball at?
Oh, I played at Grambling State and Xavier University in New Orleans.
Okay, so you were down in Louisiana all the time.
Yes, I was in Louisiana at the time.
And
yes.
Yet you're a native of Ohio.
Yes, I'm from Cleveland, Ohio. I have family lineage in Louisiana. A lot of my family went to those historically black schools. And I made a decision because I had an opportunity to go to Kent State, Ohio State. And then I have an uncle who played for Grambling State. He was a running back. And
under Eddie Robinson, probably.
Yes. Yeah, in those days at Grambling, where Grambling was beating everybody like 100-2.
Yes.
They played some Jesuit college and beat them like 100-5. They just spot them 5 and just beat them 100 points. So, yeah. So,
where's the next stop after you leave Twin Falls?
Oh, back to Vegas. I'm working on something in Las Vegas where I have my own comedy show. So I'm getting with some people there, some producers. I'm going to see if I can have a comedy show there again because I get people always asking me when I'm going to have a show in Vegas, but I'm always traveling. Like I say, hey, I'm going to Idaho, and they say, hey, well, what about Vegas? I want to see you in Vegas. So I definitely want to try to get me a show again down in Las Vegas.
Well, I want to thank you for coming by today.
Yeah.
At 8:30, you should hopefully get a nap in. I would assume before then because
yes,
you might be pushing the envelope by 8:30 tonight, unless you drink coffee like I do, a gallon a day.
No, yeah, I'll make it. I'll be fine.
Yeah.
I'll be fine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We 11 hours. There's a lot
Oh
of
yeah,
time to rest up in
left.
between.
Yeah, rest up in between.
Well, I want to thank you for coming by today.
Thank you. I
You may
appreciate
actually
it.
see a couple of folks. I'm going to later in the morning try to give away a couple of tickets to the show tonight.
Okay.
And so I'll ask them not to heckle you or anything like that.
Please don't.
Yes. But if they want to introduce themselves, maybe they can do that.
Oh yeah, come and see me. I've been on this kick. I need to get me a llama. You know, the runaway llamas. I'm gonna get me a pet llama.
Yeah, they were signed by the Cardinals, by the way.
Oh yeah. Hey, I got my opener for tonight.
What's that? Oh, yeah, you do.
Yeah.
There you go. Want to thank him for coming by, James Scott. He'll be playing tonight at the Canyon Crest. James Scott and my dad have a lot in common. James has his Cleveland Browns cap that he's wearing today. That's his favorite football team and has been, of course, as he was pointing out all of his life. And my dad, when the AFL came along and we were growing up in Western New York State, he adopted Buffalo as his team. And then when the leagues merged, that was my dad's team from then on. But he could never get over it when he was watching a Cleveland Browns game. If things were going bad for the Browns, he was miserable. So what he learned when he was young as a Browns fan never went away. And James and I were talking about that off air, how you can, James also has a background in law enforcement, as did my dad as well. But he was telling me, you can never get the team out of you. And I think that even people who grew up on teams that ended up moving away feel the same attraction. And it's difficult. I live so far away now from my favorite team. And I have lived far away from, I used to be a regular at the stadium up until about 1999, and then I moved to Vermont. And then this big odyssey started moving around the country. But by golly, this thing called the NFL ticket has really turned my life around. I'm going to give away a couple of tickets a little later in the program to actually the show tonight at Canyon Crest. James is on stage at 8:30. And here's what you have to do. During the Mike Huckabee report, because I'm going to take some details from you to pass along to the will call booth, and I don't want to do that live on air. You don't want to give out those personal details, because if you do that live on air with me, someone else will show up ahead of you perhaps and say, I'm him, and they'll get the tickets. So we're going to try to avoid that happening. But during Mike Huckabee, when you hear Huckabee start in about 15 minutes, during the Huckabee report, I'll be giving away 2 tickets to tonight's show. You give me a call during the Huckabee report. In fact, I'll take the first caller during Huckabee. Not now, but during Huckabee. And so that's going to be a wonderful bit of entertainment tonight. And be honest about it. Late February, what else are you going to do for entertainment on a Friday night in Twin Falls? Go to Jackpot, I guess. Well, if you don't want to drive in the dark, this is a much better opportunity, and you won't lose any money while you're at it. It's 9:36. Bill Colley with you on Top Story on News Radio 1310 KLIX and newsradio1310.com. 36 at our studios. I've been sharing with you, and I'm going to get to this right now. These are some questions, Q&A, that come from a fellow by the name of Fingers Malloy. He is a talk show host in another part of the country and had a guest column this week in the Washington Times. And he's offering you some quotes, and then he wants you to guess who is behind the quote. And you get 3 choices: Peter Griffin from Family Guy, Homer Simpson, or Vice President Joe Biden. Quote number 1. Oh, people can come up with statistics to prove anything. 40% of people know that. And then he asks you which one of those 3, Peter Griffin, Homer Simpson, or Joe Biden, would have said that. I have an answer key here, too. And probably the simplest thing to do is to give you the question and the comment or the quote, and then actually tell you without going back over these, because you might forget them. And if you're looking for the answer to that one, it was Homer Simpson. And it was on The Simpsons. But it could have been a comment, perhaps, that could have been made by someone like the vice president. Here's another one. Second quote. Do you know the website number? I should have it in front of me, and I don't. I'm actually embarrassed. Was that A, Peter Griffin, B, Homer Simpson, or C, Joe Biden? It happened to be the Vice President of the United States. How about this one? To start, press any key. Where's the any key? That would be Homer Simpson. The next quote. A guy at work bought a car out of the paper. 10 years later, bam, herpes. I could see Joe Biden saying that, but that's actually Peter Griffin from Family Guy. Here's another one. His mom lived in Long Island for 10 years or so, God rest her soul, and although she's your mom's still alive? Your dad passed. God rest her soul. Now that one is the Vice President of the United States as well. Here's another one. I'll get to my caller in just a moment. What am I supposed to do with all of my ideas? Put them in a tub and clean myself with them? That's what soap is for. The choice there would be Peter Griffin, not the Vice President. Then you've got this one. You cannot go into a 7-Eleven or a Dunkin' Donuts unless you have a slight Indian accent. I'm not joking. That was not Homer Simpson and not Peter Griffin, but the Vice President. So there you go. He has an opportunity every now and then to put a foot in mouth, and he does it very, very well. We have a caller with us. It's coming up on 9:40. You're up next on News Radio 1310 KLIX with Bill Colley. What's on your mind?
Hey, Bill, this is the Colonel. I just had to call in and thank you for giving any bit of publicity to my Cleveland Browns.
Do you know, I was telling our guest, just before he came into the studio, I said, I have a friend who hails from Lancaster, Ohio. And then I told him how I nearly incurred your wrath by mentioning the Cincinnati Bengals the other day.
Yes, well, they did copy the Browns, but Paul Brown went there, and I guess you could do whatever you want if you own the team, huh?
Yeah, he owned the Browns originally, right? And then owned the Bengals afterward.
Yeah. Well, I just wanted to call in and thank you for, like I say, anytime the Browns can get a little good publicity, I welcome that.
Yeah, because you never really hear about them in late January, early February.
So you don't.
Thank you for the call, sir.
Okay.
Take care. 9:40. You're listening to Bill Colley this morning on Top Story on News Radio 1310 KLIX. Many, many years ago, and I'm not embarrassed to say it, it was probably not a good idea to do it, but I used to be a nicotine addict. Used to be a cigarette smoker. I used to smoke cigars and pipes as well. And I started smoking because a young lady I knew, she happened to smoke. And I started smoking with her when we'd go out evenings, shoot pool after work. And next thing I know, she was gone, but I was still smoking. And I was embarrassed by it. It took me about 14 years before I finally just said enough of that, threw them away one last time, and never went back to it. But I realized a lot of people still do it. And it's not illegal in this country to be a cigarette smoker. Not yet. You can smoke all the dope you want in a lot of places, but no nicotine for you. Obviously it's a sacrament for the American left, the marijuana is. But when it comes to cigarettes, or even a good cigar, and I haven't had a good cigar since sometime in the 1990s, because when you give up something like that, you don't want to even encourage a return to it by a good pipe with cherry tobacco in it or a good cigar. So you stay away from it because you're worried it might draw you back to cigarettes. So once you're clean, you'd like to stay that way. But I'm not knocking anybody out there who may be a smoker. 9:45. I know a lot of people who still do it, and they're decent people. 38 at our studios. Bill Colley with you on News Radio 1310 KLIX and newsradio1310.com. This is Top Story. There is a piece from the Washington Times by Richard Berman. Britain's health ministry is proposing to follow Australia's lead in banning colors, logos, and attractively presented identification on cigarette packages. Don't worry, the images of dead fetuses and gangrene feet will still be required. Yeah, they want to scare you away from it. Although they want the taxes, too. You know that? They keep talking about how they'd like people to quit smoking. But if the smokers all die young, you don't have to take care of them for 30 years in a nursing home afterward. It's actually cheaper to have you die at 60 from smoking than to have you die from old age at 95 in a home somewhere where you've been warehoused for the previous 30 years. The writer says non-smokers on both sides of the Atlantic should take note. The bureaucrats who micromanage tobacco branding have their other hand on food and drinks that, unlike cigarettes, haven't been found to be harmful when consumed in moderation. In the cause of protecting public health, these hyperactive busybodies are trying to regulate food speech. If they don't control food speech, activists say, you'll eat too much. You see, they won't because somehow they're smarter than you are. They have more willpower than you are. They just have all around better taste. Just ask them. They'll tell you that. Activist groups include the Center for Science and the Public Interest. They would like to introduce traffic light labeling on your potato chips. I kid you not. Under this system, a green decal would mean the product is good for you. What kind of chips would that be? Oh, we have some kale chips over here with sea salt. Yeah, but how about something that actually has some flavor in it and doesn't taste like cardboard? Well, you can't get the green light. Red, that would be bad for you. So if your chips have a red light on them, no go. And yellow. Yellow means, could be good or bad. It's sort of in the middle. This ridiculous notion that somehow you don't know that when you walk in, sometimes I have done this, especially on football Sundays. I have gotten a big bag of potato chips and a tub of dip. And believe me, I don't do hummus. I have had ladies try to tell me, eat the hummus instead, and they'll buy me hummus. And all I can tell you is, I wouldn't feed it to the dog. On the other hand, a good French onion dip with maybe some sour cream and onion potato chips, or maybe a hickory barbecue. When you're watching a football game, you're not really interested in the fact that, you are aware that what you are eating is chock full of salt, chock full of sugars, and probably clogging your arteries. But you know what? It's your own dang choice while you're doing it. And these do-gooders, these nannies out there who think they have to... Somebody once tried to put down a tray of carrot sticks and celery sticks in front of me during a football game. I think that they're petrified somewhere in a museum now because they didn't get touched. And they ended up just sitting there and drying out through the course of the afternoon. You do not... When you go out and watch a football game, you don't walk in and order a tofu. You order chicken wings. And you know they're not good for you, but you don't eat them every day. It's not like you're sitting around having them for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. I could. With a nice barbecue sauce or a hot sauce and some blue cheese dressing, I think I could. But I don't do that. I do know better. I don't need someone out there telling me a potato chip might not be the healthiest thing that I can actually eat. Thank you very much. 9:48. In a short while, Mike Huckabee is coming up. The Huckabee Report will be brought to you exclusively by the financial advisors at Waddell & Reed in Twin Falls. And the telephone number there is 736-6563. Once again, the Huckabee Report brought to you exclusively by the financial advisors at Waddell & Reed in Twin Falls. That number, 736-6563. Oh, and by the way, if you would like to attend James Scott, his show tonight, his performance tonight at the Canyon Crest, feel free to give me a telephone call during the Huckabee Report. I have a couple of tickets I can set aside for you. And the telephone number here at our studios, 736-0300. That would be 736-0300. And I'll ensure that when you go to the will call booth there tonight and give them your name and your particulars, that they will have 2 tickets for you so you can drop by and see that show. The man does, he didn't have an opportunity to do it in studio with us, but he does an impression of the singer Barry White that'll have you in stitches. Either that or we'd abuse the new body to the point where the new body wasn't very new after about 6 months, especially if they had some of my habits. That's a question I would have. If I get the new body for my head, and the new body is only half my age and the new body is cut, is it going to quickly catch up with the rest of me? Or will whatever I've learned, which, all right, really hasn't been too much when you consider how old I am, would that actually be transferred into the younger body? See, you got a lot of questions here you'd have to answer about all of this. Sounds like Mary Shelley's Frankenstein all over again. 9:54, Bill Colley with you on Top Story. I'd like to thank Chris Wendell and congratulate him, too. He is the winner of the 2 tickets to see James Scott perform tonight at Canyon Crest. James Scott was here in studio with us a bit earlier today and doing a comedy show tonight, 8:30. And Chris is going to be going along with perhaps his significant other. 9:55 now, moving right along, getting things near the end of the week for us. A couple of other quick notes, too, before we wrap up the course of the morning on Top Story on News Radio 1310 KLIX and newsradio1310.com. I had referenced this earlier. Just quickly, I'll get back to it in case if someone heard me mention it and wondered what I was talking about. Washington Examiner today. Treasury will not explain decision to make $3 billion in Obamacare payments. $3 billion, that's with a B. That would be, well, 3,000 million, right? When you think about that. That's a lot of money. The U.S. Treasury Department has rebuffed a request by House Ways and Means Chairman Paul Ryan to explain $3 billion in payments that were made to health insurers, even though Congress never authorized the spending through annual appropriations. Somebody got some money as a favor, didn't they? $3 billion of your tax dollars, your tax money, has been funneled to someone out there who likely was very good to the White House during the last couple of political campaigns. And people wonder why we don't trust government anymore. People wonder why we've gotten to the point where if you look at these people who are auditioning in the next few days and yesterday as well at the CPAC conference in Washington, none of them are really of the stature of a Churchill or a Ronald Reagan or anyone along those lines who was seen as a strong, forceful leader. And yet that's what everyone craves. And even on the other side, I make no bones about it, I'm a Republican operative from way back. I just happen to be doing a talk show right now. But I look at the people on the other side too, and they don't have any Titanic candidates that they're offering. And it used to be in American history during a crisis, there was always someone around who could step up to the plate. George Washington, amazingly, was available in the Revolutionary War. Abe Lincoln came out of nowhere and held the country together in the 1860s. Franklin Roosevelt, no matter what you thought about the New Deal, was a pretty good wartime president and kept the country together and the alliances together to defeat the totalitarian powers around the world. And now we've got this. Ronald Reagan, he knocked out the Soviet Union. He kicked the legs out from under it, along with some help from Maggie Thatcher and Pope John Paul II. But nobody today seems to have that ability, and nobody today seems to have the charisma in order to pull that off. It's sure as heck not Jeb Bush or Hillary Clinton. And you wonder why we don't have confidence in people, because A, people are either too small or like this at the White House. They're all really, and I know that the word might be a little bit overblown and maybe not quite the accurate definition, but they all seem to be on the take. And if you can't trust them, well, what's left to do other than just sit back and let them walk all over you? Or maybe someday pick up the pitchfork and go after them. News is coming up next at 10 o'clock from Fox, followed by Rush Limbaugh. And then after Limbaugh, Sean Hannity scheduled following 1 o'clock news, and Glenn Beck following 4 o'clock news right here at News Radio 1310 KLIX and newsradio1310.com. This is Top Story. I'm Bill Colley. God willing and the creek don't rise, I'll be back here 8 o'clock on Monday morning.